Akana ni tumila kawangawala na tari SUAANGAN me. Uwa kowe hok parak tu duna bakuna taruk takti kakigap tu katak parak tonik katak parak na kod yalnaip me April me 1991 me. Tabrani katiruti kangat makot kawamat ko di chakot kabluting makununga Aboriginal nik pirayat Inuit mangani Northwest Territories me. Tabrani ptauk ilihari huktot ilihagalat khonikangit pingahoni ukioni ilihari hukpata Inuvialuit no kaut siniktigum tabrani tauk anyak toni khabagurut ilichokat khoni bakangit tabrani kanok khabagum magaming anyak toni wani tauk Inuit okalalakir thamma kanok isumamingnik kanok istamna kadiru tikting isumagiti lakting.
When March 25, 27 Munagalan, Tamakua Kangakanya holding Tamakununa Kaut City un Katimanakot, Taverni Yalunaiv Northwest Territories me. Ukwap Takuba when Katimanakot, Ukaut Chakparuok Tamana Agi Hukulugo, Tap Kunikatimaroni, Taverni Tapkot, Katimakati Nikabut. Dani cultural law tap ko apto Inuit cultural tap ko katimanaksot yalunay mi okakaming tabrap tap ko Inupialuit tamakolo Inupialuit cholo katimarot kagaknya ko tinging miktigun tamakkuninga pag mapak ilitsogan ya halago taman na okaw hekting.
Mr. Chairman, it gives me a great feeling to be here. To be able to discuss the culture and the language of many people throughout the Northwest Territories. Our cultures, our languages, present and future generations of Aboriginal peoples need to build on wisdom of our elders. Our cultures thrive and coexisted in harmony with nature and great spirit which dwelled under the skies of the midnight sun, long before the white explorers arrived in our land. Many of us today remember being taken away from home to strangers who spoke in a different tongue. Many began to name their world in English until they forgot the words for the land and the sky and animals. And then they began to forget how to live on the land. For the past 100 years, English and French have been the dominant languages of the government and comments in the Northwest Territories. This, in spite of the fact that the vast majority of our people spoke only in Inuktitut or in one of the Dene languages. The fact of the deterioration of our languages and our cultures and communities became even more focused for us in 1979, when Aboriginal majority was elected to our Legislative Assembly. Coupled with this, organizations such as Dene Nation and the Inuit organizations stepped up their ever-forceful lobbies for change. It has only been in the last 20 years, after increased pressure from strong Aboriginal political leaders, that the Canadian government has begun to understand the importance of native languages.
Justice. A collective or communal decision-making.
Inuvialuit tamakot eat ngupluting okauchit tamakot tak tamak hanya huibulit man in Northwest Territories me. Tamaraptok kapfichat Inuviak palangit chot lutak kaut tamakolo kangilit Inupianik tamakko Inuvialuit tanngurahungainyaquting Inuvialuit.
We have also changed our legislation to enable people who are teaching Aboriginal language and cultural programs to be certified as teachers. Now, we've had to compromise on academic credentials to some degree, and there's lots of debate about how important that is anyway, in order to give people who are teaching the languages the same kind of certificate as a teacher would get who is teaching the general subjects. The people will then have the right to belong to the teachers' union, and they'll be recognized in the schools as a teacher. In order to achieve this, we're setting up a one-year program where people, to begin with, will be given an interim certificate. We'll have 3 years to complete some teacher training, and then we'll be giving a one-year specialist certificate, which will entitle them to teach Aboriginal languages and cultural programs. This is essential if we're going to teach the languages in the schools. Otherwise, we're just not going to have the teachers to do it. And finally, the last point I'll make is we give strong support to 2 groups of people that we think are critical in terms of the evolution of Aboriginal languages, and those are the Inuit Specialist Council and the Aboriginal Educators Associations. Both of these are associations of Aboriginal teachers who may be involved in teaching Aboriginal languages, but certainly are going to be the strongest professional group of people we have who will promote the languages and ensure that they continue to exist and thrive forever. That's just a very brief summary. I'll close there, and we're into the education workshops this afternoon. We can get into details. Thank you. Miigwech.
Waptaok tamakko kangekkhiniahalluillu tamakkoolu hivunnioruniaqhuting tamakkunuuna oqqautsitigun tamaani havaakullu tamakkoolu havangitsuakun inuuniaqaptailaani kangekkhiniaartugut tamakkuaptaoq uwani inuuvikaaptigini kangekkhiniahallugut qannorpiniartigilarput meitadi inniaupluni inuuvingmin
Pina taiwa yalonaif muktami ikpaksanik taiwa pingasungortaaqoblok matkuninga khauchinika uvane khanorileotilaksanginnik sivunik saptingni taiwa sini machining makperanik taiwa matkuat pitkuyaksengor tanik tunasi recommendations nik Taiwa matkuan malerodak sa 1992, 1993, ta matkuan recommendation piyaksat. Taiwa sin ilang ita matkuan ilisaw jilu ta matkuan o kaos rablu ilisaw jiyuksat. Annawik kulo ta matkuan annaktuad iman nannawing milusud suldakap inum timalusun kau siksak si vunneo digibluo innailu imanna kanok ilisaw jiyuk sanik si vunik saptini okak si mayon mane taywuna ilisak si mayon ne ilisang itugot okak titpagay ne sumik pisukup ta si vunik saptinik tap karasin innaid Okaw sa Inuvialuit kanok ilisaw jiyuk salo pitkosik sait sivunnapting nilutaiwa nutak iman na nutala dinuit kanok ilisaw jiyuk sada ilitin na Inuvialuk tunok okaw chiptigun taiwa sin tayo mani tuani pingasun ublune okaw siksat kinuyak kalaktuat Kang manis sama sulis sa waktu nga taiwa utang mi umamat kununa ukapsana ka miluni na lautikon uvaw wanita na pingasuni ublune taiwa ka ilang taiwa pila katatap ko recommendation taiwa Inuvialuk tun pitkuyak siyad taiwa tamno kausari mayakpot kang ma Inuviak tu do kausik sa sulia kawanitod Taiwa matkuat sud ilisaksat munaksik salo anawing milusawak kiksat tamat kwari lisakubluit tayvo na lukak si mayon tayo tayo malak tuami
ubab taok taman na kangikput kangik kanya halugo ilaga taman na kangik kanya anikput ubagut kaibiput agalat taok taman na ihumagip lugo taman na okaw hakput tambawangit lugo ubaros meri miyuk termi tabrani lihaw rataw
Kadang mer iliniak tulari habaw hit okaw hek kot nunapting ni tamak padlialang mat nutakat okaw hek ting ni okak padlia yung nang mata magpirali ako ta taigwali ako talo ilihay vit atok takay nik habak ko ta hadjalo Aulak tilihak tak kotam na atakak tok kakayak nutak kivianik dalvani nutakat dalvunga wakat tak tudublok tamat inuin naktuin na okak vigi blugo okak vigi blugit ayo akaw ti blugit inuin naktut okaw hangmik tap kuat nutakat Kablu na tuin na okakatay na matahadya inuin naktut okayu kakugit dalvani nayoktay ni tam na ang nat katimayit havagayat awlaktitad kihime kadang meut ilinyak tudagayit ikayokti dalvani dalvuna nutakad okawhek ming ayu akomik Sikolaktin natik, sikorving me, okayu kiblutik inuin naktut, taima inuin naktuin nak ilihak pada kayangin ne.
Robert Cook tatak hulmanailamin.
Alvin sibin yakta tayo tamakkat adlat kiktani inilanin. Tayo asida tayo tamakkat sibukya o tigi yang itilangit tayo ilangit sa pernalakalo tut kisyanik dayo tut kiksanek simagait
sa pernalakalo ting isuangan nakpuli tabrani wanik katimalang matik pagrapag
talwa Inuvialuit tok inunut tamain nun iskiliga lamat inuga lamat alonit tayo taman no kausap ko tayo kanokliyaw tingit kuptiyo tayo nungunyaman
Tabrani wa kuleo nakwat hawak tuat tabrani katilab luting tamak kuna kangek kanyak tukurani gilo ilihak tukurani gilo tamak kuna lu ilan niptaok hawak pak tukurani kibun niya hoti gilo Inuvialuit taman na anya ko tingal lu ni habang nilihulugo kangek kanyak haluan nakhoti kirakting Tabrtap ko kapitchat tayo na Inuvialuit ta tabrunga ganat kulian nakibut. Tamak ko tabrani habaktit agalak tingilyo tabrani kate makaming. Tamak ko katilla luting kangakhanyanak kwat. Tamak ko tamara habagwit kangakhanyaket katilla luting habakaming. Tamak ko hibun niya huting makperatigun taman na kangek kanya halago tabrani kangek kanya na kaming taman na kangek kanya tihirak ting hibun muktin ni kangat tabrani ptaok katimalla kaming ilihaw dak taman na habakatigil na kami rin hibun niya ko na huting nakupel lang nakwa tamak ko ihumaliungit ihumaliya kami tabrani Inuvialuit kata makwa hawak tabrani nakunak kwat.
To some degree is it recognizes the fact that the Aboriginal people have to hold on to their mother tongue.
Tamakwa taw kinyay. Tamakuna ni ilihaw dirani ilingitigun ihumamiktigun ilihaw iruhrak kalot. Tamakwa taw Inuit makwa okaw hingit. Ko wingi tamak ko na kip ka kanya available. Magkap taok utok kanat tumilaka havaktuani hivunniortaani lu councilni havaktukurakkaluat ikayortaalurik tamakkunuuna ilamiktigun inniaqatimitigun tamakkunuunaptaortamakkua inniait akinniaktukurakkaluat tamakkuaptao ilihaurit makkua skuortuat tamakkua ilihaurilhurakkaluangit kiaqtormatut pilugit tamakkunuuna inyuktigullu ulaartiqallaalugit ilihaut iluhuranik toqqanaani. Debbie Brisbane, IBC Kalungnin.
The conference has been quite interesting. I've been to lots of other language conferences before, and the majority of the people who were there were linguists and professors who study languages. And so this one is much more interesting because it's a lot of people participating who are using languages, who need to understand languages, people who deal with Aboriginal languages every day. So people talking about the power and the ability of television, radio, print with Aboriginal languages. And that's been interesting from IBC's point of view, getting a lot of feedback that way. And it seems that it really is helping to promote and to get people to use Aboriginal languages.
This is the only place in Canada where you've deemed the Aboriginal languages to be official. That's a lot further than the status quo. I think to wish that things were a certain way just can't have them happen. I don't think it's a lack of political will. I really don't believe that. I think what it is the competing needs that are out there, that are existing. Like childcare is a huge problem in the North. We need to do something about that. And yet at the same time, we also feel the need to deal with the majority population's language rights. And I think that's happening, but it's going to take some time. And whether it really actually goes 100% of the way depends on the federal government. If the federal government wants to make a world-class example of how Aboriginal languages can be actualized at all levels, it can take the Northwest Territories and move it to the end. It can take it and recognize its official status of its Aboriginal languages. It can also give it special status or unique status in owning up to that particular official status that's been deemed here in the territories, and to reflect that in the Constitution. But if they don't do that, then I really believe that we're going to succumb to a lot of the pervasive influences, the pervasive influence of television. I mean, we're not putting enough money into Aboriginal television programs. People thirst to see their own culture and their own languages.
Lisa McLaughlin, Tamnaloya on the Cockyalanifme.
Aboriginal languages may now be used in the courts of the NWT. That's the Territorial Court, the Supreme Court of the NWT, and the Appeal Court. Even though the documentation has to be in either English or French, any of the Aboriginal languages can be used, either if you're an accused and you want your whole trial to be in your own language, that can happen. If you're giving evidence in a trial, you can give that in your own language. So those are the two things that are in place now. There are also some changes that have been made to the Act, but they will not come into force. They won't be law until either the end of December 1992 or the end of December 1993. And at the end of December 1992, that's a fairly important provision because it will allow for any person to communicate with or to have services provided in an Aboriginal language at the area, regional, or community level of an institution of the government of the Northwest Territories or of the Legislative Assembly. And that will provide quite a difference, but there are a couple of exceptions there. First, that provision does not apply to any municipality or municipal council, any settlement or settlement council, and you'll have to do a couple of things before you'll be able to exercise that right. You'll have to establish, first of all, that there's a significant demand for your language so that you can communicate or be provided with services from that office. And secondly, you'll have to establish that because of the nature of that office, it really is reasonable that your Aboriginal language, Inuvialuit, be provided at that office level.
Kathleen Hansen, Inuvialuit.
Uwokot okaktit mat nga tamno okasak ilalaki ga wani ikpakrapag katimak pakapta hulaka inyo itokakton nalakto akit ka kalaw takangit kalwak tunga uwap kun agalan nalakto halunga tabratam na hanggang sa nakaloka na koka nutakawot ilihaw tiuptig inyupeton ilit ko rin paya kalokat utak ko paya kalokat uwag utokaw hekputun nutakaptik nun tabratam na mutik raw kaloka na koka kaming uwan muktin na kaloka na kat tabratam na mga kalalak tungukot ukaktot kumat nga Tawro mga kihitsa mo ba ako akarakta ako nakanak ko nga kanyakapkit katimakpagto at inuit tawro kihitsa mo bang utokaw na kalaw na ko igaw tirakto nga yan tawro ni takupalukit ka inuit tuharo nga kotsimik nakuro akot ka tawro nga ni ay gupta Islo atun tamat ko ato harawat angalat pati ko yan ayak tunga. Tawrat tualok asala.
Tamat tamat ko mana kami tamat ko katim matikangit kawa malup katib luit kawa maungit cholop katib luit tamani hawagak tu tau chikun. Kaman naptaw wagut ikayaw halu okaw putamanna skurwing nilo. Tamani jusko yung itkaloktoni mani ay mawing mi tamani ju kangek kanya halu pirai put tamanna okawek put agara tamanna tammakai ju habak tuhurak kalogut wagut tau tammakai welu gulu akille kangek kanya halu sko wing nilju wagut tiun sko weliota tamakkunap tau ilya takka nagin takkawut ay mawing milyoni tabrani nanilaka tay nakakalitabra kanom niya chugut.
How will this conference like revitalize maybe interest?
Well, I think that that where a lot of in a lot of cases where something is well maybe not necessarily dying but ailing, there are ways to combat and heal that kind of sickness, and I think in this case, through various, whether it's through print or whether it's through audiovisual, the promotion of the Inuvialuit language with the help of the territorial government and with the help of a conference like this will surely come back. So I don't, it may take a while, but I don't really, would not consider it dead by any means, because we have shown, as Inuit, we have shown a strong resiliency in that, as an example, in the late 60s and early 70s, in our region, you know, dock teams were dying out. Today, dock teams are thriving in the Eastern Arctic. So it's just a matter of a bit of a will to get something back. And while it may be easier to bring back dogs than the language that a lot of young people have forgotten, it's not impossible, and I certainly would want to promote in however I can, you know, bringing back the language through the use of elders, through the use of the territorial government promoting it through their curriculum in the schools. And
these languages have been preserved for thousands of years. They were uttered thousands of years ago, and we have had an oral tradition basically by which we have, these are gifts that have been passed on from one generation to the next. Even with all of the colonialists and all of the assimilationist policies we've endured, we still have hung on to our languages and who we are. Can you imagine what it would have been like if we ever had a hand from the government to really be able to express our language and our culture? I mean, they would be able to move us. We would be like a rock. But now they put us in a very vulnerable state, but we still survive. That's the essence of being a Northerner and being an Aboriginal person, is we're very good survivors.
Hibullaqubvaunus kuoruviktigun ilihaqavikrak taamna hibullea inuiruoqaimaruat oqautseq taamna oqautigineaqalugu aimaguming nutaqqattamakkua angajoqaamik nipirakalakkaluangat tuguliaptauq taamnaptauq tuguliaguoq ilihau rikiruhurakkaluat skuoruvigne tamakkunaniptauqanñaqanik ilihau riqaqoting taamnaptaquna aqullea tamanna inupiat oqauhiat naalaktakkarangat tautuohirangalluunni tamaani naalautitigun TV tigullo tabrungaagala taapkua hivunniaqunikkangit. To bring the language back from the elders' point of view for the Inuvialuit younger generations, which is 2 generations back down already, according to some reports, that they're going to have to strongly send their either kids to the Inuvialuit courses or help target, take it themselves and help target at home as a first language, sort of, on an everyday basis, everyday after school basis. And to make the 2 work together, you're going to have a system that works just as strong as the other. But to make the language really work, we're going to have to create learning centers, Inuvialuit learning centers with computers and tapes, with earphones and everything else, like listening to some of the games. And we're going to find money, and to find funding for that, if they find the funding, they shouldn't give these dead-end fundings, because when we talk about languages last few years were always funded to a certain point that it just goes only so far, and people are just going to educate themselves to be teachers in that department, and comes to a point that these little centers we have now are just small learning centers for kids from kindergarten up. We're going to have to go further than that, because if we really want to save the language, we're going to have to work with the younger generation, and probably the younger generation than the younger ones we have right now. If you have any comments, please write to Tamapta, Box 1704, Inuvik Northwood Territories, XOE OTO.